Hey folks, hacking this and that, back again with another tutorial. This time I'm going to introduce you to a solution called NodeRed. Now, for those of you that are in software development, you'll recognize the name. But what I want to do is just a small sort of mini application built on NodeRed that you can build with hopefully zero, but definitely low cost. For any application you're thinking of, maybe you've looked at some of the integrations, DataCake, Tag.io, etc., and they don't fit the need of what you're looking for, or you're looking for something just a little unique that you feel you can sort of design your own thought process or your own decision logic in rather than trying to work within a framework. So at this point, you should have a device set up in your console. If you haven't, you want to jump back to the list of videos and go back to the earliest videos where I walk through setting up a Dragino temperature sensor in console and connecting it to an integration. So at this point, we're going to introduce a new integration, or at least a new use of an integration, and that is the HTTP integration to NodeRed. Now, park this for a moment. How do we get NodeRed up and running? The easiest way to do that is on a service called Heroku. If you haven't seen it or heard of it before, it is a fabulous way to test prototype applications in a not so permanent hosted environment. And I say not so permanent as in if a project goes dormant for a set amount of time, they will spin down any resources that are being used by it until the next request comes in, and then it's a little slow spinning back up and getting everything on online, and then it's ready to serve again. And then there's a extended period of time of inactivity where they'll just turn around and archive it. So how do you get a NodeRed running on Heroku? The first thing you want to do is get a user account on Heroku, and then I will include a link in the description to a script that will deploy NodeRed on Heroku for you. Once you've got that up and running, you'll set your username and password, and then you'll be in. Now, I already have a flow set up here. Yeah, you're getting a sneak peek at what we're going to do here. But when you start in a new NodeRed environment, there is nothing there. I'm going to include the JSON, or at least somehow to download the JSON payload so that you can get the starting point of how to set these up. I don't want you to have to create them all manually. I might as well at least give you a bootstrap. But the important thing is once we have this up and running, we need to create this web endpoint. And in here, we're going to set it to accept a post request, and the URL is going to be whatever your Heroku space environment is / the URL path. So in this case, we're just going to call it /sensors. So we're going to take that information and we are going to come on over here to console, and we're going to put in our endpoint URL, and using my fancy copy paste tool, there's my URL to my Heroku server up and running. And then with NodeRed, you have to specify the content type. So we're going to do a content type and tell it that it is an application JSON. That's it for setup, other than give it a name, call it Heroku, and add integration. So now we've got our integration. Obviously, from previous videos, you know that we need to figure out how to connect something to that. So I believe I created, I got a default function that already decodes my LHT65s. And I have an LHT65 that is in that label, and I'm going to come up here to my flow. There's my label, there's my decoder, there's some previous projects. So what do we need to do? We need to grab our Heroku integration, add it to the board, close this, and join. Well, drag and drop fail. Okay, join. All right. So now we have a flow that is going to take our decoded payload from our sensor and send it to Heroku. So what does that look like over here? Well, let me go ahead and just delete this flow. And we're going to take this stuff and we're going to move it down here, because this is the essentials that we need to have. So with the HTTP request, we do need to have a page response. So we created a page, and I threw in some basic HTML that says there's nothing to see here. You can put whatever you want in there as long as it's properly formatted. And then we want it to respond with a status code 200, which is standard internet code for all good. So then we have this debugger node. This will display the message payload. So I'm going to expand this. I'm going to deploy my application, and then I'm going to activate my sensor, and I should see a payload come through. Now, what type of things can you do with this? As a very simple application, you have a number of options you can do with this. Maybe you're a dog breeder and you want to monitor the temperature of the whelping room. Great way to do that. Set an alert if the temperature goes too high or too low. What else do I have here? What if you've got another use case that I have, which is the Dragino door sensor. So every time the door opens and closes, you just want to know, maybe it's a restricted access. In my case, it's access to the roof of a building that I help manage. And I want to know if somebody's going on the roof, because I already know in advance if there's any contractors that are supposed to be going up there. And still out in the garage as part of another project, I have a water sensor. Again, if there's water in the basement, fire off an alert. So very simple application here that we're going to do that's basically just going to say, hey, something happened that you want to know about, and I'm going to show you how to send it as a text message to your own phone. So here is my payload. So the important part in here is this decoded payload, and that is that my battery level is good, 3 volts. It's using the external temperature sensor when I have it plugged in, which I currently don't. Humidity is 49%. My external temperature error result is always going to be 327 because there's no probe connected. But the built-in temperature sensor is 23.63 degrees in this room. That's the important stuff. So how do we turn that into something else? Well, that's where this extra blob of code that I hid down here in the corner becomes relevant. So let's bring this back up here. And let's break this down one node at a time. So the first one is a switch. What I'm actually doing here is using this as a gate. The idea is if the temperature is above or below a threshold, then it will continue down this path. Otherwise, it gets discarded. So what can I do here? What I have done is I have told it to look at the property of my decoded, break this down here, message, payload, decoded, payload, temperature sensor. So payload, decoded, payload, temperature sensor. And if it is greater than or equal to, and you can put whatever value you want here. The easiest way to get this value here is find it in your debug payload. And these 3 buttons here at the end are very useful. So the first one is copy path. What that will do is save you any copy paste errors or typos. So we're going to paste that in there. There's my property that I wanted to look at. And then the value, I can turn around and let's say I wanted to grab a fixed value that wasn't going to change much. I can copy that and it'll just grab whatever that value is. And I could then paste that in there. So in my application, these are usually in refrigerators. So I'm going to say if my temperature is greater than or equal to 7, which is just a little above the food safe zone, want to make sure that the kitchen manager can respond promptly to any situation where the refrigerator is getting too warm. So this is going to send through a temperature. It's going to be above this threshold, and it is then going to move on to this next node. What I've done here is really simple. I don't care about the rest of that payload. What I care about is what am I going to send in my text message. So if I look in here, I simply just do a change, which is set the payload to a string value. So I've made a friendly message in here that will get sent as the message. Once I've done that, I am going to disable this because I need to show you how to do text messaging in a moment. So we're going to disable that, and we're not going to send a text message just yet. We're going to use this message payload to confirm that our payload is coming through, that our rule is getting confirmed, and that our message payload is being defined as we have set. So we're going to deploy the code. We're going to clear our debug. Oops, important step. Connect the dots and redeploy. Okay, so now activate my sensor and wait for the message payload. Now, Twilio, you're going to see this little red node on here. Twilio is a great service for doing messaging plus a whole bunch of other things. But the nice thing about the SMS capabilities of Twilio is once you've set up your account and you've verified your account with your own cell phone number, it will allow you, it will allocate you a test number. That test number is just a randomly selected phone number that Twilio owns, and you can send any messages through that number to your number free of charge. So again, this is trying to keep this on the cheap for you guys. Once you've decided this is the path you want to go, then you can look at doing something like Vultr or DigitalOcean for a $5, virtual private server. If you, I think a minimum payment is $20. If you give Twilio $20, you can then text any number. It doesn't have to be just your verified phone number. It can be any phone number. And at basically a penny a text message, you won't have to top that up for a while, unless you got a lot of people going through a door or very wild swinging temperatures, maybe in a greenhouse or something like that. But it all depends, your cost will vary depending on how much and how often you want to be notified. So we've now got our payload. So here was our original payload that came in off this debug node. You'll notice when I hover over any of the values here, it tells me where it came from. So it's going to look just like the old one. And then we notice here that my custom message payload, fridge is over temperature, has been fired out of this node because the temperature was greater than my threshold of 7. So let's now move on to getting that message onto a phone. If you go ahead and set up a Twilio account, like I said, you're going to need two things. The first is this account SID and your auth token and your Twilio assigned phone number. Don't bother trying to call me on any of these. Trust me, these are all temporary dummy values that I have set up to make sure that you're not getting my real phone number. So how do we add Twilio to NodeRed? Because it's not a default node. This is where the palette comes in, and the palette allows you to connect to essentially the marketplace of available nodes. You're going to click on install, and you're going to search for Twilio, and you're going to find this first one. Again, one of the things about using free code on the internet is I like to be cautious about how old it is. So that's a good side note. Briefly, when you do go to deploy your own virtual private server and your own NodeRed instance, there are 1,000 tutorials on how to deploy NodeRed on whatever flavor of Linux that you want to do. It'll even run on Windows. There's a number of resources out there if you just want to run this on a Raspberry Pi, as if we all don't have a bunch of Raspberry Pis. But if you happen to have a spare Raspberry Pi that you want to set this up on, you can run it on a Raspberry Pi. The important thing there is making sure that console that's out on the internet can talk to your Raspberry Pi in your closet, fixed IP address routing, that kind of stuff. Again, if you're going to go that route, hopefully you know what I'm talking about, and I don't have to go into an in-depth tutorial on how to configure your firewall to talk to your NodeRed on your Raspberry Pi in your closet. All you have to do is click install and confirm that you wanted to install those components. Once you've done that, you'll come down over here, usually way down here at the bottom, and you'll find a new category called mobile. And we're going to drag that node onto the page. Once you've done that, and I'm going to turn this back on as enabled, it needs a Twilio account. So in here, this is where you're going to set up your account ID, your from phone number. This has to be the number that Twilio has assigned you, and your token. You can give it a friendly name, whatever works for you. The next thing you need to do is say that I'm going to send outbound SMSs and I want to send it to my own cell phone number. Again, don't try to call, it's not my real number. And then again, give it a name, make it friendly for what's on your flow. Once you have that, then the last thing is to connect those two nodes. And we're going to leave our message payload here so that we can confirm that what has been fired off to Twilio and make sure that everything looks good. Once all those have been done, you're going to again deploy. I like to clear my debug board so I can make sure that I'm only looking at the most recent activity, and I'm going to now fire my sensor. And with that, I should receive the first full payload, my second payload that was sent to Twilio, and because I'm using a virtual phone number, there is my message. Just because I didn't change it, I'm going to, for fun, go in here and say NodeRed demo is done. Save, deploy, activate, and there we are. And there we are with our text message. All right, so I covered a lot of things there. I'm going to include as many links as possible. Again, if you decide you want to go full on and deploy this on a virtual private server, great resources out there like DigitalOcean, Vultr, $5 a month. Twilio will give you a free number for testing and demoing, $20 minimum top up in your bucket, I guess, to cover any other SMS fees, and a phone number if you want to, buy your own number. I think it's $1 a month for local numbers, too, on the high side, maybe. So you should be able to cover this for the better part of a year on that $20. That's about it. I am going to do a follow-up to this later on. I'm going to get a little more advanced and a little more funky on that, but it won't be something you'll be able to do on Heroku because we're going to talk about getting into InfluxDB, which is a time series database, so it records events over a series of time rather than a traditional database of relationships. As well, we're going to look at adding on Grafana for visualization, so basically building everything you would get in a DataCake or Tago.io service, but a whole lot more customization functionality, and that also includes alert functionality. Again, that's a demo I'm going to come back to later. Another one just to tease y'all is what to do when your sensor doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Well, I'll talk about some valuable tools that you want to have, like TTL adapters and sensor adapters and jumper wires, so that you can diagnose what's going on inside your sensor when you're not getting the results you're looking for. Anyway, this is all for now. Again, you can find me on the Discord, hacking this and that. Love to chat with people about what they're working on, open for questions or just a thanks. Again, muchly appreciated for all the love and attention that these videos have been getting. I'm really enjoying doing them. So have an awesome day and good luck with your project.